Max was supposed to be just one more invisible dog at the shelter, but everyone working there already knew his turn would feel completely different. He was too old, his steps were heavy, and he had already gone through countless adoption events without ever finding a home. Worse, some people had even stopped, let him touch his nose to their hands, only to wave him off and walk away in the end. So, while other dogs left with families one by one, Max kept waiting in the corner for what felt like one last chance. Then, when his moment finally came, it somehow got even more suffocating. Because this was not just the story of a dog being overlooked yet again. It was the story of a dog who almost lost his ending completely. The day had started like these adoption events usually do. Staff set up the play area, explained the rules, and brought the first dogs out one by one. Some people made their choice fast. Some took a little longer. But little by little, dogs started leaving with their new owners. The atmosphere in the shelter slowly got lighter and brighter, except for one corner of the room. That was where Max stayed. While other dogs got their moment to shine, Max remained lying quietly off to the side with the shelter staff. Silent and easy to miss if you were not really looking. At first it just seemed a bit odd. Why was he still lying there when almost everyone else had already found a place to land? But then people started hearing the story. Max had been here not just for a few months, but for his entire youth. And the worst part was not just that he was constantly being passed over. In those earlier years, there were times he had actually walked up to someone first. He had chosen them. And later they still said no. Hello, old friend. 9 years old, loves to sleep in, and isn't noisy. Do you want to say hi to him? No, I'm okay. Looking for a slightly more energetic one. Thank you, though. Yes, no worries at all. I understand. Come here, big guy. Come on, Max, let's go. We'll find the right person for you. By the time most of the room had cleared out, the event did not feel like a general adoption day anymore. It felt as if everything had narrowed down to revolve around one single old dog still waiting for his turn. When the staff finally brought Max into the main area to meet someone who was hesitating, the mood of the whole room changed right away. He moved like a dog who had been carrying too much for too long. Slow steps, stiff back legs, head always lowered, and eyes that looked tired even when he was standing completely still. He was not trying to put on an act. He just looked truly exhausted. On his first try, he walked toward a family and got turned away. Staff gently smoothed things over and gave him another chance. The second time, he approached a young man. Rejected again. And that was the point where the whole room really started to feel the heaviness of it. The first rejection could have been brushed off as just an unlucky moment, but the second one made it impossible for anyone to pretend things were still fine. Staff changed the way they handled the room after that. Things stopped feeling like a normal round of introductions. They tried to keep the atmosphere very calm, tried to help Max stay engaged, tried to give him one more fair chance. So he tried a third time and received a shake of the head again. That was the hardest turn of the day, because after that moment, Max stopped behaving like a dog who was still part of the event. He did not keep moving from person to person. He did not keep searching. He pressed himself tightly against the staff member or simply stood there frozen as if something inside him had completely given up before the day even had a chance to end. People started packing up. The chairs were folded away. It seemed like Max's day was going to end the exact same way it always did, staying behind the iron bars. And perhaps that would have been the end of the story. But somebody else heard what had just happened. A 40-year-old man named Arthur got word of Max's story quite late and hurriedly drove over before the shelter closed. He was not part of the initial event. He was not just a person with free time lingering until the last minute. He came because he had heard about this specific dog. The staff told him everything. Max's age, his weak legs, the consecutive rejections, and the emotional collapse that had just occurred. Arthur still wanted to meet him. Feeling of the story changed. There was no crowd left. No pressure. No room full of people waiting for a grand emotional moment. Everything was quieter now, slower. Arthur was not reacting to the atmosphere of the event. He was there for Max himself. He gave him time. He stayed with him. He did not treat Max like a pity decision or a last-minute rescue that he might regret on the drive home. He met him, and he genuinely cherished him. And for the first time that day, the staff were no longer trying to patch up a broken moment. They were witnessing a real connection take place. By the time that meeting ended, there was no fragile or forced feeling left. Arthur was taking Max home. The car ride back was very quiet, and when Max first walked into the house, he did not behave like a dog who knew this was where he belonged. He moved very slowly through each room, taking in the space bit by bit. Nothing about him looked settled. He was cautious, guarded. The first night passed in tension. He did rest, but he did not sleep deeply. He looked like a dog trying to close his eyes, while still keeping a part of his body in a defensive posture. Because Max carried so much trauma from being abandoned, Arthur had to adjust immediately. He could not just walk straight up to him without warning. He had to make sure Max always saw him first. He had to be incredibly careful about how he approached him, how he touched him, and how he moved around Max's space. In the beginning, life with Max came down to keeping things very simple and predictable. Arthur paid attention to all of it. He noticed where Max felt the most relaxed. He noticed that he never fully stretched out when he slept in the early days. He noticed how he always maintained his alertness even in a completely silent house. The first changes were very small. Max started choosing to stay in the same room as Arthur instead of always keeping his distance. He watched him, memorized his routines, and followed him with his eyes long before he started following him with his body. Then one day, in a completely ordinary moment, Max willingly walked and lay down right to him. That was one of the first real signs that something inside was shifting. He chose closeness himself. From there, a new rhythm began to form. Peaceful meals, short walks, safe places to lie back, repeated contact without any pressure. Because Max was old and his back legs were stiff, Arthur did not try to force energy or big changes. He built the days around what Max could handle. It was not entirely easy right away. There were still times when Max seemed unsure. If the routine was disrupted too much, he seemed less settled that day. It was clear that he was still adjusting, still trying to figure out whether this new life truly belonged to him. But things kept moving in the right direction. Before long, Max was not just staying nearby anymore. He started tracking Arthur closely throughout the house. If Arthur stood up, Max would look up too. If he moved to another room, Max would slowly stand up and follow. Meals became calmer, sleep deeper, and he moved through the house with noticeably less hesitation. The bond showed up in the most ordinary ways. Arthur no longer had to wonder where Max was because he was usually very close. Maybe lying where he could see him. Maybe waiting in the next room. Or maybe scrambling up with stiff legs just to follow him. It was not dramatic. That was exactly what made it feel real. Their connection had moved out of that grand initial rescue moment and deep into daily life. And that is where the contrast really showed the most. At the shelter, Max always looked like a dog who was constantly being asked to prove himself one more time only to continue receiving rejections. At home, that pressure was completely gone. He did not have to win anyone over. He did not have to make another choice. He did not have to try to survive one more adoption event. The dog who had given up after the third rejection was now living in a place where staying did not depend on performing, guessing, or hoping that the next person would actually take him. By the end, the thing that seemed to have defined Max's life didn't define him anymore. He was not the dog left behind at the end. He was not the dog who lost his entire youth in a metal cage. He was Arthur's dog, and this time he was truly chosen.